Hello YouTube and welcome to an all new Elder Scrolls lore video. Today we're talking about Emperor Belharza, the only known Minotaur emperor of the Cyrodiilic Empire. His case is quite a curious one, so let's immediately delve in. Alright, so Emperor Belharza, the Minotaur Emperor, and according to legend, the first Minotaur. His story is quite interesting and starts well before his birth, back in the early years of the First Era. At this time, the humans of Cyrodiil lived as slaves under the oppressive rule of the Aelid Empire. The Aelid elves enslaved the humans to be used as tools, but the Aelid Empire weakened eventually, and the humans of Cyrodiil rose up against their Aelid masters in what was called the Alessian Slave Rebellion. This rebellion, which saw the humans free themselves and overthrow several Aelid kingdoms, was led by a figure which now has mythical status, Slave Queen Alessia. Alessia, however, did not lead the rebellion on her own, for at her side were two great champions with now equal mythical status. The first to come to her was the demigod Morihos, who was deemed to be a son of Cain and who appeared to the people as a large bull with wings, walking on its hind legs. The second champion of Alessia was the crusader Pelennor Whitestrake, who single-handedly took down armies of Aelids according to the legends. Together they founded the Alessian Empire, of whom Alessia became the first leader, the first empress. And you may notice how I often use the words mythical status and according to legend, as all this stuff took place almost 3000 years before the events of the Elder Scrolls Online and more than 4000 years before the events of Skyrim. If we count the Middle Dawn Dragonbreak, of course, and even if we don't, it's still more than 3000 years before Skyrim. Anyway, that is important to remember, as all we have on the Alessian Slave Rebellion are mythical stories. Sources on a lot of details are very fuzzy. So, although we can be fairly sure the story as I recounted it to you is the way that it most likely happened, there's still some fuzziness on details. Either way, what is important for the story that I'm telling you today is that Slave Queen Alessia was, according to the sources that we have, romantically involved with the demigod Morihos, who again came in the shape of a large bipedal bull with wings, according to the most recent and vast majority of the sources. Their love spawned a child, which they named Belharza, who was half human like his mother Alessia and half bull like his father Morihos. He was, according to legend, the first Minotaur to walk on Tamriel. Although there are some conflicting sources stating that Minotaurs were already on Tamriel by that time, but again this stuff all plays 3000 years before the Elder Scrolls Online and now has mythical status on Tamriel, so let's take it all with a grain of salt. What we are almost certain of is that Belharza was a Minotaur and that he was the son of Alessia and Morihos. And there are sources saying that his horns were specifically distinct from his father Morihos, who was a regular bull instead of a Minotaur. We even have this sketch of former Elder Scrolls developer Michael Kirkbride of what a young Belharza could have looked like, including a sketch of an older Belharza by the same guy. And as you can see in the sketch of the older Belharza, he's wearing the Amulet of Kings, which I took the liberty of giving a red shade. Anyway, he was indeed able to wear the Amulet of Kings as he carried Alessia's blood and was supposedly the first true bearer of the amulet when his mother passed away, as he, as her legitimate son, became the second emperor of the Alessian Empire. He wore the amulet after his mother's soul had been imbued within it by Akatosh and the divine pact to keep Mundus safe from the threat of oblivion had been established. It is likely that he was the very first Tamrielic emperor to light the dragon fires at the Imperial city, which was by then only recently conquered by the humans from the Aelids. But his reign as emperor was not a peaceful one, as wars with the remaining Aelid kingdoms continued to rage on, and it's said that Emperor Belharza fought on the front lines himself against the elves, together with other Minotaurs, who at this point were civilized citizens of the Empire and would continue to be so for several decades. Not much is known about his reign, but like I said, the closest reference point, Elder Scrolls Online, has his reign being almost 3000 years ago, but here's what we do know of his life. We know that he had quite a good relationship with his mother, Empress Alessia, as they often exchanged private letters as Belharza fought on the fronts while she was still alive, most likely ruling things from the Imperial city. We know that he ascended to the throne in the year 266 of the First Era, and that he died somewhere before the year 358, as then his son was in power. Because we know that during his lifetime he took a wife and he had a son named Amiel, who would succeed him as emperor. We do not know which race Amiel was, as with a union of mortals, customarily the race of the mother is the race of the child, with Belharza likely being an exception, due to his father Morahas being a demigod and thus not a regular mortal, and thus Belharza became half man and half bull. Now here's the thing, one reason that we know so precious little about Emperor Belharza is because in the year 361 of the First Era, only 95 years after Belharza's ascension to the throne and his coronation, the Alessian Order, a sect of human extremists, became the dominant political power in the Alessian Empire. They persecuted elves, trying to wipe them from the empire, but also ousted other non-human races, among which were eventually the Minotaurs. At some point during their prominence, the Alessian Order banished Minotaurs from society, shunning them from society and branding them outcasts. This began the decline of Minotaurs from proud members of the Empire to the creatures that we see today. But it's not just the contemporary Minotaurs which they outcasted. The Alessian Order reportedly also removed all of Minotaur history from the Imperial history, among which was the history of Emperor Belharza, who was scratched from the history books by them, and even Morahas, whom they tried to describe as human in newer history books instead of the winged bull demigod. Due to this effort by the Alessian Order to remove Emperor Belharza from history, all that remains from his rule are fragments, weathered etchings and scraps, but due to these scraps which the Alessian Order failed to destroy, we do know that he was there and that he was a Minotaur, and that he existed as emperor. And if he truly is an ancestor to all Minotaurs, that would mean that all the Minotaurs have Alessian blood in them, but then again, this is all 3000 years ago from our nearest reference frame, Elder Scrolls Online, so it would be like me discovering I have the blood of an Egyptian pharaoh. I mean, yeah, maybe, but it's such a small percentage that it's insignificant. Also, if in a union of mortals the child always becomes the race of the mother, then Belharza, who is a male, would have a very low chance of ever making another Minotaur with a mortal woman. Again, we don't even know the race of his own son and whether he was Minotaur. So yeah, I kind of dispute the story of him being the first Minotaur and all, as we do have some stories of Minotaurs existing before that point, so let me know what you think. Was he the first Minotaur? Was he not? We don't know. What we do know is that he existed, and that he was a Minotaur, and that he was an emperor over the early Alessian Empire. Anyway, I sincerely hope that you learned something today, and that is all that I can say about Emperor Belharza. Quite the interesting piece of lore. But as usual, before I end this video, allow me to say that I hope to see you again in the next Elder Scrolls lore video next week, and allow me to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Polaris Putin, Athena Hyodis, King Chris, Scribe of the Scrolls, Doji, Fenrir, Soto Bushido, Sar Mikal, and Mr. Christmas. It is thanks to these people and all the others on screen that this channel stays alive, and for that I am very grateful. That said, I hope to see all of you in the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Bye bye.